You curse someone. You're creating a thought form that is from your own essence. And if it returns, it finds a home because it corroborates with your essence. So be careful of what you curse. Hating a genuinely good person is dangerous specifically because the ill wish has nothing to grip on. So it comes back at full strength. And a person who has cleared the coarser material out of himself becomes progressively unreachable by anyone's malice. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott, and I have a juicy episode today. We're going to talk about the concept of thoughts as living things and the Theosophical foundation that brings us the idea of thought forms, the astral world, and the machinery of manifestation as it's understood by these ancient teachings. Somewhere in the 20th century, a nobleman went to the Crusades and took his youngest son with him. The boy was his favorite. Father brought him along to win his spurs in a sacred cause, and he carried in his chest one wish above all others, which was that this son would make something of his life. The young man was killed in battle, and the father broke. He grieved the death, and underneath the death, he grieved something worse, which was that his son had been taken suddenly, in the full flush of careless youth, with no time to prepare. So he took off his armor. He joined a monastic order, and he vowed to spend every remaining day of his life on a single prayer, repeated with everything he had, that no descendant of his would ever again meet death unwarned. Day after day for years, he poured the entire energy of his soul into that one channel. He died. The centuries went by. 700 years passed. And in an English family in the 1890s, when someone in the house is about to die, they hear music. 3 days before the death, a solemn dirge-like strain, apparently floating in the air, has been happening in that family for centuries. One member of the household heard it twice himself, and both times the warning was accurate. He went looking for the cause, and what he concluded is the reason I made this episode. The prayer is still running. The old Crusader, without knowing what he was doing, built something out of the substance of the invisible world. It's been operating on his own ever since, keeping a promise made in Palestine to a young man who died in armor 700 years ago. Here's the sentence they wrote about it. An elemental is a perfect storage battery, one from which there is practically no leakage. His prayers became an elemental being, much like a pendulum or egregore, and lost no charge, running for centuries. Tonight I'm going to show you the system that claim comes from, where your thoughts go when you finish having them, what they build, what they do to other people, and what they are doing to you right now while you sit there. What we're opening tonight is the Theosophical literature. The Theosophical Society formed in New York in 1875 and moved its headquarters to India. Its investigators spent decades attempting something almost nobody else has tried with that level of organization: to examine the invisible worlds systematically, record what they saw, cross-check observers against each other, and publish the results as a working science. 3 books carry over the core of it: The Astral Plane, published in 1895, Thought Forms, published 1901, written by Besant with a colleague and containing 54 color plates of what they claim to be looking at, and the Chakras from 1927, which is the anatomy underneath the whole thing. I want to say one thing about the authorship and then set it aside. The people who produced this material were controversial in their own time and remain controversial now. I've looked at that history. Tonight, I'm leaving the personalities alone. In another episode, we can do a deep dive on the whole framework of people writing these books behind the scenes in the Theosophical societies. But these books are diagrams, and the diagrams are extraordinary. Take them as a model rather than a revelation. Test against your own experience. Because here's what's in it: a complete physics of thought, where every idea you have creates 2 separate effects, one that broadcasts and one that builds, a color code for human emotion, a mechanism for why curses return to the person who sent them, a structural explanation of why some prayers get answered and others circle back and land on the floor, a description of the human aura as a cage you built yourself, and now see the entire world through, and a bridge to real laboratory physics that anybody watching can reproduce at home tonight. I read all three, and here's the system. Start with the architecture, because everything else sits on it. The claim is that you own several bodies at once, occupying the same space, interpenetrating each other, the finer passing through the denser the way water passes through a sponge. The physical body is the one you know about. Inside and slightly beyond it sits the etheric double, described as a mass of faintly luminous violet-gray mist extending a little past the outline of the dense body. Its job is to carry vitality. Without it, as a bridge, thought and feeling would have no way to reach the cells of your brain. Around that sits the astral body, which they also call the desire body. This one is spectacular in their description because it changes constantly. The karmic aura, which expresses by its vivid and ever-changing flashes of color the different desires which sweep across the man's mind from moment to moment. Every desire that crosses your mind produces a visible flash of color all day, right now. Behind that sits the mental body, which changes more slowly, in weeks and years rather than seconds, and shows the disposition and character of the personality rather than the mood of the moment. Then, the line that reframes everything. Besant states, it is the auric egg, which is the real man, not the physical body, which on this plane crystallizes in the middle of it. The body is the thing that crystallizes in the center of the real you. And there's a detail about the astral body that will change how you think about seeing. On that plane, an object is perceived from every side at once, with the interior as visible as the exterior. A glass cube would appear with all sides equal, which is how a cube actually is, while physical eyes see the far side smaller, which is an illusion of perspective. They call this sight in the fourth dimension. So the claim is that ordinary vision is the distorted one, and the wider side is closer to how things truly are. Here's the engine of the whole system. Each definite thought produces a double effect, a radiating vibration and a floating form. Two separate outputs from one thought. They do different jobs, they travel different distances, and they have opposite strengths. This behaves like sound rather like leaving a speaker. It goes out in all directions, weakening with distance, and wherever it strikes another mind, it tends to reproduce its own rate of motion in that mind, which means it tends to provoke, in the person it reaches, a thought of the same type as the one you had. But here's the constraint, and it's a beautiful piece of engineering. They state, this radiating vibration conveys the character of the thought, but not its subject. Character without subject. A person sitting in deep devotion pours out waves that stimulate devotional feeling in everyone nearby. And the devotion those people feel attaches to whatever they already love. Their own object, their own name for God, their own family. The feeling transmits, the content stays home. Same for thinking. A person working hard on a high subject radiates something that stirs up high thought in others without ever suggesting what he was actually working on. Then another line I keep returning to, they wrote, every man who thinks along high lines is doing missionary work, even though he may be entirely unconscious of it. You are broadcasting the quality of your interior life to everybody in range, all the time with no way to switch it off. The second output is a thing. Such a thought or impulse becomes, for the time, a kind of living creature. The thought force being the soul and the vivified matter, the body. Multiple people thinking the same thought is what creates pendulums and egregores, but a single thought can create a living thing. The thought pulls surrounding matter around itself and becomes a temporary living entity. Every thought. Its soul is the force of your thought. Its body is the material it gathered. And these two effects have opposite properties. The radiation reaches thousands and produces something similar to your thought in them. The form reaches very few, and in those few it reproduces your thought exactly. The radiation may affect thousands and stir up them thoughts on the same level as the original, and yet it may happen that no one of them will be identical with that original. The thought form can affect only very few, but in those few cases it will reproduce exactly the initiatory idea. broad and approximate or narrow and precise. Every thought you have does both at once. They compress the entire mechanism into 3 sentences, and these are the most usable lines in the book. Quality of thought determines color. 2. The nature of thought determines form. 3. Definiteness of thought determines clearness of outline. Definiteness determines clearness of outline. A vague wish produces a shapeless rolling cloud with soft edges. It drifts, it radiates weakly for a while, it runs out of energy, and it falls apart. Nothing arrives. A precise thought produces something with a hard edge. They describe it changing shape as it moves, the way a projectile does, and traveling to its target and discharging there. Understand what's going on here. They would go into meditation and learn the ability to see thoughts and then analyze the thoughts like scientists describing their behavior in these books. This is The Thought Form by Charles Ledbetter, and The Inner Planes by Annie Besant, and Chakras by Ledbetter and Besant, and so many others that the Theosophical world has worked on and produced. Compare their own 2 examples. A person feeling drowsy, warm fondness toward a friend makes a revolving cloud of rose-colored mist, pleasant and completely ineffective. A mother catching up her child and covering her with kisses generates something with the same purity of color and an entirely different outline, described as a clean edge drawn forward into the shape of a comet head by the speed of its travel. Same emotion, same color, one of them arrives. That's the argument for specificity in your practice, made in 1901 by people who claimed they were describing what they saw rather than what they believed. Every vague affirmation you have ever spoken produces a cloud. Every precise one produces a projectile. Now the passage that made me go back and read again. They state, each man travels through space, enclosed within a cage of his own building, surrounded by a mass of the forms created by his habitual thoughts. Through this medium, he looks out upon the world and naturally sees everything tinged with its predominant colors, and all rates of vibration which reach him from without are more or less modified by its rate. A cage of your own building. That's why you create your reality. You're looking through the filter of your living thoughts that surround you. And then, they state, until the man learns complete control of thought and feeling, he sees nothing as it really is, since all his observations must be made through this medium which distorts and colors everything like badly made glass. Everything you have ever concluded about your life came to you through that glass. Every judgment about whether you're capable, every read on whether someone likes you, every assessment of whether this is going to work out, all of it filtered through a structure you built yourself out of thoughts you had so many times. They became an architecture around you. And here's why it holds well. Thoughts about yourself remain hovering around you, and they keep provoking a repetition of the idea they represent, because each repetition feeds the existing form and extends its life rather than making a new one. So the cage maintains itself by making you think the thought that built it. They give an example that is uncomfortable and precise. A man dwells on something he wishes he would stop dwelling on. During the day, he forgets about it entirely because his attention is elsewhere and his astral body is busy vibrating at other rates. Then evening comes, he rests, his mind goes blank, and it comes creeping back. He decides he's being tempted by the devil. And they state, yet the truth is that the temptation is from without only an appearance, since it is nothing but the natural reaction upon him of his own living thought form. The thing that arrives when your mind goes quiet is what you've been building all day, under the scenes, sometimes as unconscious and subconscious thoughts. The Theosophists publish a color chart, and the readings are specific enough to use. Black is hatred. Red across its range is anger, from lurid brick red flashing out, dark brown clouds for brutal rage to a vivid scarlet for what they call noble indignation, which they describe as by no means unbeautiful. We're not talking about the color of my shirt. We're talking about colors that you see in the unseen world of your thoughts. Clear brown near burnt sienna is avarice. Hard, dull brown gray is selfishness. And they note that this one is painfully common. Deep, heavy gray is depression. Livid, pale gray is fear. Gray-green is deceit. Brownish-green flecked with points of scarlet is jealousy. That's what they decoded these colors as they opened their inner eye and watched their thoughts as people spoke. Green in general means adaptability, and it climbs. At the bottom, mixed with selfishness, adaptability becomes deceit. Higher up, it becomes the wish to be all things to all people. At the top, it becomes sympathy. Affection runs through crimson and rose. Full clear carmine is healthy normal love. Stain it with brown gray, and you get grasping. Pure pale rose is the unselfish kind, and they say it passes from the dull crimson of animal love up into the delicate shades of early dawn as it purifies. Deep orange is pride and ambition. Yellow is intellect, running from dull ochre for intelligence aimed at selfish ends, up through clear gold to a pale luminous primrose, which they call pure reason directed to spiritual ends. Blue is religious feeling, from a dark brown blue of selfish devotion up to a pale azure they describe as self-renunciation and union with the divine. And violet is affection and devotion combined, marking the capacity to absorb and respond to a high ideal. Then the master rule, brightness and depth of color measure the strength and activity of the feeling. Once again, these were masters back in the day, evaluating the shape and color of thoughts through their inner eye and reporting back like scientists. So the aura is a readout. Hue tells you what the feeling is. Saturation tells how much of it is there. These classic Theosophist books like Chakras and the Inner Planes and the Astral Planes that were written by the Theosophists, all of them were written with illustrations. They're amazing and are the reason these books survived. A few of them will stay with you. A dull, unpleasing hue, and the form ends in curving hooks. Those hooks, they say, appear only when there is strong craving for personal possession, and the form has failed to throw itself outward at all. It projects half-heartedly and stays attached to the body that made it. Their summary of the difference: this person asked, how much can I gain rather than how much can I give? And so the thought curved back on itself instead of leaving. Selfish greed, claw-shaped, reaching. They report seeing these converge on a woman wearing a new dress or a piece of jewelry, and describe crowds outside a shop window protruding astral cravings through the glass. Then there's watchful jealousy, a brownish green, and shaped as a snake with its head raised. They call it an apt image for the jealous person, who is keenly alert to discovering the one thing he least wants to see. The moment he believes he has found it, the form changes into a vague cloud interspersed with definite flashes of anger. Then there's sustained anger. A keen-pointed stiletto-like dart is what that thought looks like. This one was a thought of steady vengeance, held for years against a specific person, and they say something chilling about it. If the maker had a strong and trained will, such a thought form could kill, and the person nourishing it is in serious danger of it becoming a murderer in a future life, as well as in this thought. Then there's the thought of explosive anger, which they say is completely different, a radiating burst with a vacant center, meaning the feeling that caused it is already over and no further force is being generated. Compare that to a thought form of steady radiating love, where the center is the strongest part, indicating a continuous upwelling rather than a flash. The center tells you whether something is still running. A thought of blessing sent by someone who has earned the right to bless. It takes a wing-like shape, rose-colored with intellect shining at its heart, like sunlight. And the authors are careful here, saying the maker almost certainly had no thought of wings when he made it. Their purring cat. In the middle of this, a small perfect detail, a contented cat radiates with their thoughts, concentric shells of rosy cloud outward for a few feet when they purr, fading into invisibility around its drowsily contented creator. Two scenes are worth reading on air in full because they carry the teaching better than any explanation. The Shipwreck. 3 thought forms observed simultaneously in the middle of a terrible accident, arranged exactly as they appeared. The first is an eruption of living gray rising out of a base of pure selfishness, and the shattered look of it shows the violence of the explosion, blind, frantic terror, with everything higher shut out. They say, sadly, there were many like this one. The second belongs to a woman with some religious feelings who is trying to master herself. A point of grayish blue lifts hesitantly upward, and the color says The effort only partly worked. The lower part of the form is irregular with fragments falling off it, meaning there's nearly as much fright here as in the first one. But she remembered that she could pray, and she is trying to believe she is calm while she does it. They note the difference plainly. One of them retains some possibility of regaining control. The other has become an object slave to the emotion. The third belongs to the officer in charge, and it has the shape of a weapon. Clear-cut, definite, full force. A sharp scarlet point of anger that this happened at all. Above it, a bold curve of orange, which is self-confidence and certainty of his power to handle it. Brilliant yellow, meaning his intellect is already at work on the problem and running alongside green, which is sympathy for the people he intends to save. Their comment, it never even occurred to him to feel fear because he had no time for it. Then they went to a funeral. They looked at two mourners standing in the same relation to the same dead man. The first produces bands of brown gray and leaden gray, despair and personal loss, with fear underneath, because the nearness of death has raised the thought that it will become part of him too. And then the detail that I found curious, the very curious downward protrusion which actually descends into the grave and enfolds the coffin, is an expression of strong selfish desire to draw the dead man back into physical life. Grief with a hook on it, reaching into the ground. The second mourner produces something entirely different. Light green at the base for sympathy with the living, deeper green for the dead man himself, deep rose for affection towards both. Then a cone rising with blue for devotion and violet for high ideal, and golden stars lifting off the top. A band of clear yellow through the center, meaning the whole attitude rests on his understanding of what is actually happening. The two forms have no single emotion in common, and this pairs with something in the astral plane that matters enormously. If you've lost somebody, the claim there is that intense, uncontrolled grief reaches the departed and rouses them out of a natural sinking away back into vivid remembrance of the life they just left, often with acute suffering. The correction offered is specific. Affectionate remembrance directed into earnest good wishes for their progress is a real force and helps them. The same energy spent on longing to have them back does harm. I want to be careful with that one, and I want to say plainly that grief is human, and there's no shame in it whatsoever. Take from this only the practical piece. When you think of someone you lost, aim the love forward on their behalf rather than backward toward getting them returned. Now the mechanism that explains karma without requiring a judge. A thought form aimed at a person has to find in that person's aura material capable of vibrating sympathetically with it. Anything can only vibrate within certain limits. If the incoming form sits outside every limit the target's aura can reach, it produces no effect at all, so it rebounds. And here's the part that matters. It rebounds from it, and that with a force proportionate to the energy with which impinged upon it, it then flies backward along the magnetic line of least resistance, that which has just traversed, and strikes its projector. He, having matter in his astral and mental body similar to that of the thought form he generated, is thrown into respondent vibrations and suffers the destructive effects he had intended to cause to another. The line of least resistance is the path it came on, and the sender is guaranteed to be receptive because he built the thing out of his own material. The one person in the world certain to have matching substance is the person who made it. Their phrase, "Thus curses and blessings come home to roost." You curse someone. You're creating a thought form that is from your own essence. And if it returns, it finds a home because it corroborates with your essence. So be careful of what you curse. They had a consequence that follows straight from the arithmetic. Hating a genuinely good person is dangerous specifically because the ill wish has nothing to grip on, so it comes back at full strength. And a person who has cleared the coarser material out of himself becomes progressively unreachable by anyone's malice. They say, so long as any of the coarser kinds of matter connected with evil and selfish thoughts remain in a person's body, he is open to attack from those who wish him evil. But when he has perfectly eliminated these by self-purification, his haters cannot injure him. Your protection is your own composition. Nobody can hand you a thought you have no receptor for. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you think. Then there's the open curve. This is the single best idea in this literature. I found it nowhere else. in hundreds of years of reading this material. They are explaining why some prayers appear to be answered. Start with the geometry. When a thought or feeling is selfish, the energy it produces travels in a closed curve. It goes out, it turns, it returns, and it spends itself on its own level. It comes back to you. When a thought or feeling is genuinely unselfish, the energy travels in an open curve. It cannot close. It has nowhere on its own level to complete itself. So it pierces upward into the plane above, because only there, with an additional dimension available, is there room for it to expand. And now the part that turns it into engineering. They write, in thus breaking through, such a thought or feeling holds open a door, to speak symbolically, of dimension equivalent to its own diameter, and thus furnishes the requisite channel through which the divine force, appropriate to the higher plane, can pour itself into the lower with marvelous results, not only for the thinker, but for others. A door with a diameter equal to the diameter of your thought. The higher force is described as always present and always waiting. The way water in a cistern waits to pour through the first pipe that opens. It requires no persuading. It requires an aperture. And the aperture can only be cut from below by a human being through an act of genuine selfishness. They finish by saying the result gets called an answer to prayer and gets attributed to special interposition of providence, when what actually happened was the unerring action of a law. Run this against your own experience. The things you asked for hardest and most personally closed curve. They circle back and come back, and you felt the wanting again. The moment something enormous arrived and you had no idea why, check whether you had recently done something for somebody with no possibility of return. Selfishness makes a loop. Selflessness makes a door. And the size of what comes through equals the size of what you sent. Now back to the Crusader, because we can explain him. A kindly thought about another person or an earnest wish for their good forms and projects toward them a friendly entity. If the wish is definite, that form hovers over them, working toward the specific outcome, seeking opportunities to serve and defend. And the way it operates is elegant. It has no intelligence of its own. It is a force pressing steadily in one direction and taking advantage of any channel it finds, the way water in a cistern finds the one open pipe among dozen closed ones and empties itself through that. They write, a thought of love and of desire to protect, directed strongly towards some beloved object, creates a form which goes to the person thought of and remains in his aura as a shielding and protecting agent. It will strengthen friendly forces that impinge on the aura and weaken unfriendly ones. It stays in the field. It amplifies what helps them and dampens what harms them. Then they write, thus may we create and maintain verifiable guardian angels around those we love. And many a mother's prayer for a distant child thus circles round him, though she knows not the method by which her prayer is answered. They say, these have occasionally been seen and in rare cases have gathered enough density to become briefly visible to physical sight, especially those with an inner sight awakened. And a detail I find genuinely beautiful. When a mother passes on, the love she continues pouring toward the children she thinks of still reaches the real children living here and continues to sustain the guardian form she built while she was alive, until those children pass on themselves. Blavatsky's line quoted in the book, her love will always be felt by the children in the flesh and will show up in their dreams and in providential protections and escapes, because love is a strong shield and it has no limit in space or in time. Now put the Crusader back in, an ordinary man with ordinary grief, doing one thing every day with total intensity for the rest of his life, built a battery. The battery's been discharging carefully for almost 700 years for this family, where no deaths happen that are unknowable, spending almost nothing because it is called on so rarely, doing the exact role that it was assigned, warning his descendants 3 days out so nobody in his line would ever again die unprepared. So if you're in that family, put it in the comments. If any of you that are watching this episode are hearing music or have heard stories in your family of music playing before someone dies, I want to hear about it. I want to know if this can be verified in the real world now. Here's what the material touches Something you can verify tonight. Take a plate of brass or glass, scatter fine sand across it, draw a violin bow along the edge. The sand jumps, and when it falls, it arranges itself into a geometric figure. Change the note by touching the plate at a different point, and the figure changes with it. These are Chladni figures, named for Ernest Chladni, an 18th century physicist, entirely real, reproducible in any lab, and searchable in about 4 seconds if you want to see them. Vibration produces form, demonstrated, physical, undeniable. The Theosophists took that as their foundation and pushed it. They reproduce work by F. Bly Bond, an architect who coupled pendulums together, swinging at right angles, attaching a pen, and let the combined motion draw figures automatically. And some of these mechanically produced drawings turned out to match thought forms that Sears had described independently. Their inference, if two forces on the physical plane bearing a certain ratio one to the other can draw a form which exactly corresponds to that produced on the mental plane by a complex thought, we may infer that that thought sets in motion on its own plane two forces which are in the same ratio one to the other. If a pendulum in a certain ratio draws the shape a thought makes, then the thought is running two forces in that same ratio. They are honest about the limits, saying much further investigation is needed before anyone can say what it means. And here's your modern callback. The study of vibration producing visible form is a live field now, under the name Cymatics. Sound made visible in water, in sand, in powder. Look at those images alongside the 1901 plates and decide for yourself what you think. The Chakras supplies the hardware that all this runs on, and a few pieces are worth having. Theosophists explain that the word means wheel. They are described as points of connection where energy crosses from one of your bodies into another, appearing as saucer-like depressions or vortices in the surface of the etheric double. Undeveloped, about 2 inches across and glowing dully, awakened, they are described as blazing, coruscating whirlpools, greatly increased in size, resembling miniature suns. The mechanics are stated in electrical engineering terms. Force enters the mouth of each center from outside and sets up secondary forces at right angles to itself. Their comparison is a bar magnet thrust into an induction coil, producing a current that flows around the coil at right angles to the magnet. The primary forces then radiate outward again in straight lines, forming the spokes of a wheel, and the number of spokes determines the number of pedals. 2 claims from that book stay with me. First, the crown center reverses. It begins the way all others do, as a depression, because force flows inward through it. And then, they state, when the man realizes his position as a king of the divine light, dispensing largesse to all around him, this chakra reverses itself, turning as it were inside out. It is no longer a channel of reception, but of radiation, no longer a depression, but a prominence standing out from the head as a dome, a veritable crown of glory. A receiver that becomes a transmitter. They connect to the dome on thousands of statues of the Buddha and to the crowns the elders cast down before the throne in Revelation, arguing that a person in that state keeps casting down everything he generates, and it keeps reforming as more wells up from inside. Second, the earth and the sun. The primary force descends from above. The serpent fire rises from below. From what they describe as a laboratory deep inside the earth, the two meet inside a human being and grind together in the vortex, and the compound they produce becomes the nerve force that runs your body. They explain, we thus draw God's mighty power from the earth beneath as well as from heaven above. We are children of the earth as well as of the sun. These two meet in us and work together for our evolution. Children of the earth as well as the sun. That is a good line. It's a good model. You are the place where the two currents meet. One more before the practical section, because it's the strangest thing in the book. They claim music builds structures. Each piece leaves behind a form that persists for an hour or two and remains visible to anyone who can see it. The same piece played accurately always builds the same shape, though the shape grows enormously larger on a church organ than on a piano, and the texture differs between a violin and a flute. And the quality of the performance shows. There's a wonderful difference, they say, between the radiant beauty of the form produced by the work of a true artist, perfect alike in expression and execution, and the comparatively dull and undistinguished looking one which represents the effort of the wooden and mechanical player. Errors in the playing leave corresponding defects in the structure. They illustrate 3, all performed on the same church organ so the scale can be compared: Mendelssohn, Gounod, and Wagner. The church appears in each plate for reference, and they tell you the tower is just under 100 feet, which means you can measure the forms against it, the tower far above the building. So if this is true, then every concert hall, every church, every set of headphones, and every room where somebody practices badly is producing architecture in a material you cannot see, and it stands there for a while afterward. I have no idea whether it's true. I know that I've walked into rooms where music had recently been played and felt the difference, and I suspect you have too. Set aside whether clairvoyance is real. Here's what falls out of the model that works regardless. 1, your habitual thoughts are load-bearing. The occasional thought builds something that lasts minutes. The repeated thought builds something that lasts years and gains strength every time you return to it, which means the thought you have 400 times is a completely different object from the thought you have once. Audit the repeats. The ones you barely notice are the walls of the cage. 2, precision beats intensity. Definiteness determines clearness of outline. A powerful vague wish makes a big soft cloud that dissipates. A clear, modest thought makes something with an edge that travels and arrives. When you set an intention, make it specific enough to have a shape. 3, watch what shows up when you go quiet. The thing that arrives in the blank moment, in the car, in the shower, at 3 a.m, is your own construction returning. Treat it as a report on what you've been building rather than as an attack from outside. And 4, aim your ill will nowhere. Whatever you send at somebody rebounds if it finds nothing to hold on to, and it comes back along the exact line it traveled, and you are guaranteed to be receptive because you built it out of yourself. This is the cheapest possible piece of self-interest. And 5, cut the door. The one action that opens the aperture is a genuinely unselfish thought, one that cannot close back on you. Do something for someone with no possibility of return and no way for them to know. That is the open curve, and the model says when they looked at these thoughts, the size of what pours back through matches the size of what you sent. And 6, build a guardian for someone. Pick a person, hold a definite protective wish for them with a specific outcome attached, and return to it daily so it keeps getting fed. According to this system, you are constructing something that will sit in their field and strengthen what helps while weakening what harms. Setting aside whether the mechanism is literal, I've never once seen this practice fail to change the person doing it. So stay with me. Keep your eyes where they are. Now, every thought you have becomes a living thing. You have been building all your life, and tonight you take the controls. The cage opens, the old forms release their hold and dissolve back into the substance they came. You see clearly now. I activate you now in this moment. The glass is clean. You look out at your life and you see what is actually there. Your thoughts have edges now, precise, definite, clean at the outline. What you want has shape. You send it and it travels and it arrives. Color pours through you. Rose for the love you carry. Gold for the mind that is working. Green for the sympathy that runs alongside. Violet rising for the ideal you hold for everything. Your center is the strongest part. Steady, continuous, welling up from underneath and pouring outward without stopping. You radiate the quality of your inner life to everyone in range. You give with nothing expected back. The curve opens and it reaches upward. It finds room and holds open a door exactly as wide as the thought that made it. And the force comes down. It has been waiting. It fills you. It spreads out around you. It reaches the people near you and lifts them. You build a guardian around the ones you love, and it stays in their field, and it works for them while you sleep. Nothing aimed at you can touch you because you have cleared out everything it could hold on to. Money moves towards you. Health rises in you. Love finds you and stays. You are a child of the earth and a child of the sun, and the two currents meet inside your body and turn into power. The crown reverses. What flowed in flows out, and you have become a source. Everything you send returns multiplied through a door of your own making. It is done. A man in the 12th century lost his son and spent the rest of his life on one prayer, and 700 years later his family still hears the music 3 days before death. That story may be exactly true, or maybe a 19th century investigator making sense of a family legend. I can't settle it for you. What I can tell you is that the model underneath is coherent. It's old. It worked out carefully by people who took it seriously, like scientists in the realm of consciousness. And it says something I believe. Every thought you have becomes a living thing. The vague ones dissolve. The precise ones travel. The repeated ones build the room you live in. The selfish ones come back around and land on you, and the selfless ones open a door. You are building right now, while I talk. Build something worth living inside. Before I go, I want to invite everyone that's watching to join the Reality Revolution tribe. You can find the link in the description. I hold weekly group coaching sessions, and I have exclusive content you can't find anywhere else. I want to have the chance to meet you and talk with you. Click the link and join. I look forward to seeing you there. I'm sending all my light, all my love to everyone that is listening. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I am so excited to cordially invite you to an amazing event we're hosting in Austin on September 18th to the 20th. We're going to take you into the large sums of money portal, into the vortex where you live in the reality where large sums of money come to you. Almost 10 million of you have listened to one meditation on my channel. And my comment section is filled every single day with people telling me the same impossible story. Money showed up, unexpected checks, refunds out of nowhere, raises, clients, windfalls. And the amazing thing is, it's not just a little bit, it's large sums of money, just as those words denote. From one affirmation, this September 18th through the 20th in Austin at the Hyatt Regency, we're going to do it together in one room for the very first time. Years ago, I found the affirmation that I changed my entire financial life with. I have read it thousands of times. Millions of you have fallen asleep to it. People call it the master code. And here it is. You know it well. You can probably say it with me. I am so happy and grateful now that large sums of money come to me easily and quickly in increasing quantities from multiple sources on a continuous basis in the best interest of all, that I get to keep, give, spend, and invest joyfully. This has been the master code of my life, and so many of you. It has changed my life in so many ways. Every single word in that affirmation has come true in my life. And there's nothing I want more than for you to experience the same thing. Every word is deliberate, large sums coming to you easily and quickly from many sources continuously in the best interest of all. This is the affirmation people have written to me about from their cars after an unexpected deposit, from their kitchens the morning a check arrived, from lives that changed after they simply kept listening. It works. You had told me it works. Tens of millions of views later in a comment section that reads like a miracle log. Read the comments under that meditation right now. Real people, strangers to each other, saying the same thing in thousands of different ways. The money came, the exact amount they needed, the opportunity they had given up on, the doors that opened the week they started listening. And here's what stays with me the most. The people who come to my live events tell me the same thing every single time, that being in the room in 3 days does what years of listening alone was building toward. The meditation opens the door. The room walks you through it. For the first time ever, I'm taking the master code deep for 3 days into a room. For 3 days this September. An entire event built around shifting you into the large sums of money future that is available to you. 9 immersive sessions. We open by unleashing infinite streams of money. We walk through a range of money. We quantum jump into large sums of money together. You come face to face with the wealthiest self of you in the multiverse. And we live inside this affirmation for 3 days until it becomes deeply embedded in our DNA, until it is no longer something that you listen to. It is who you are. This is the most powerful way I've ever found to transform money in a person's life. And I've only ever been able to give you a piece of it through the screen. I'm going to give you all the most advanced teachings on money, ways I was able to make money. I want to show you that in this new economy, in this new age, that you have access to infinite streams of money, that it's available to you now. We're living in the best time ever to be prosperous and free. I'm also bringing things into the room that I've never done at any event. I'm keeping them a surprise. What I will tell you, this is the first time gathering around the master code in person for 3 days, and it will only be the first time once. You're going to want to say that you were there when it happened. You're going to want to be the one sharing your success story in the way that it changed your life, in the way large sums of money came to you.
Today was my first day with Brian Scott, It was just a wonderful experience.
So my favorite one that has always resonated with me is the manifesting abundance mindset. So like I am so happy and grateful that large sums of money come to me easily and quickly.
I've been a fan of Brian Scott's for years, and the opportunity to see this event live exceeded my expectations.
So grateful to be here. I've been listening to Brian's stuff for 2 years. I'd say Brian really changed my life.
When we come together, everybody's affected by it. Even if you don't necessarily believe, the energy of it is so incredibly powerful and magnetic. The room is small on purpose, every seat within arm's reach of me, and these seats are going quickly. We have a lower early bird price than any of my other events, specifically targeted so that if you're interested in going to one of my events, this is the perfect time to go. I'm so excited to go to Austin, one of my favorite places in the world. Austin is such a creative, unique, vibrant city. It is the perfect place for us to manifest large sums of money into our life. September 18th through the 20th, you can find the link in the description at www.brianscottlive.com/Austin-2026. I cannot wait to see you there.